Not sure if this is on. I hope everyone's ready to go. Thanks for joining us today. Merci pour nous joindre aujourd'hui. I'm Jason LaChapelle, the press secretary for the Green Party of Ontario. So we'll have Mike Schreiner speaking for about 5 to 10 minutes about a letter that was sent this morning to Premier Designate Ford, and then he'll have some time to take your questions. There's copies of the letter on the table over there, and feel free to come up to us after if you have any additional questions or needs. And an embargoed release was sent out about half an hour ago, so you should have a copy in your email as well. And without further ado, I'll introduce Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party and the MPP-elect for Guelph.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're on the traditional lands of the Huron-Wendat, the Senecas, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. And I also want to acknowledge our responsibility as stewards of this land for the next 7 generations. So today, I sent an open letter to the new Premier. I wrote it on behalf of tradespeople, local contractors, builders, and suppliers who stand to lose money, jobs, and business. I wrote it for homeowners, renters, and institutions who will have less money to reduce energy bills. I wrote it for my constituents who want us to embrace the clean economy and tackle climate change. I will now read a shortened version of that letter. Premier Designate Ford, I want to work with your government to help Ontario create jobs, save money, and fight climate change. I was elected to do politics differently at Queen's Park, and I'm ready to find common ground with you to build this province up in a financially and environmentally sustainable way. Climate change is the biggest threat facing humanity, and there is an urgent call for us to act. Fortunately, what is good for the environment is also good for the economy. You acknowledged in the final leaders' debate that climate change is real and human-caused. Yet, since being elected, you have begun to dismantle programs designed to reduce greenhouse gas pollution, create jobs, and lower utility bills. And you have done this without offering alternative solutions. So I want to share with you 5 reasons to reconsider this path. First, the steps you are taking to pull Ontario out of cap and trade without a transition plan are reckless. You are creating uncertainty for businesses and risk for the people of Ontario, who could be on the hook for paying back $2.8 billion in potentially worthless permits purchased by Ontario companies. You are potentially putting taxpayers on the hook for billions in legal fees, penalties, and other costs. Your actions are bearing the hallmark of the gas plant scandal, when decisions were pushed through by ideology and ego rather than logic and evidence. I ask you to slow down. I ask you to give businesses time to adjust and to show us a plan before killing what's already in place. Secondly, climate denial, whether explicit or implicit, is bad for business. It's time to accept that pollution pricing works. 80% of economists in a recent survey say that it is the most market-friendly and low-cost option for reducing pollution. There is no evidence to support your claim of a job-killing carbon tax. As a matter of fact, in Ontario's first year of pollution pricing, unemployment shrunk from 6.4% to 5.5%, and GDP was at a 7-year high. In fact, the 4 provinces that led Canada in growth in 2017 were the exact 4 provinces that have a price on carbon pollution: Ontario, Quebec, BC, and Alberta. Pollution pricing is essential, and it's coming, whether by Ontario's design or by the hand of the federal government. It's time to put forward a Made in Ontario solution. Third, I'm deeply concerned about the messages you are sending to businesses and families. Advanced manufacturing, clean tech innovation, and energy efficiency are where the job growth is happening, and it represents a $7 trillion global economic opportunity. Ontario's clean tech sector already employs 130,000 people. Yet your decision to shut down Ontario's climate programs is causing businesses to reconsider investments. You've told them that Ontario is closed for business. And to families who want to lower their bills by conserving energy, you have taken money out of their pockets and told them they must do it alone. So if your goal is to create jobs and lower utility bills, I must ask you, why are you doing the exact opposite? Fourth, inaction on climate change threatens our pocketbooks and our safety. According to the Insurance Bureau of Canada, severe weather events caused $4.9 billion in insurable damages in 2016. Last month's windstorm alone caused $380 million in damages. Devastating spring floods, unfortunately, seem to be the new norm. This is not the future I want for my daughters, and I know it's not the future you want for your children either. So I hope you are not abandoning Ontario's GHG reduction targets. These targets matter. They matter to people here in Ontario, and they matter to the health of our planet. So if the economic case is not enough to convince you, then I hope you will consider our shared moral responsibility to do what is right. And finally, I believe we have common ground because we can fight climate change and put money in people's pockets. So I encourage you to adopt a revenue-neutral carbon fee and dividend system that returns all money from pollution pricing to the people of Ontario through dividend checks. This is a way for you to keep your campaign promises without sacrificing action on climate. And instead of canceling home energy retrofits altogether, you could replace the Green Ontario program with a more transparent and accountable eco-energy audit program that can help people save money by saving energy. And so on the eve of the swearing in of your new government, I hope you will listen to these and other sensible solutions. I want to work with you, and I want to work with your new cabinet. But I also want to make it very clear that it is unacceptable for any government in 2018 to act as if the climate crisis does not exist. So I'm asking for your plan, for a real climate change plan that includes a market-based price on pollution, that supports job creation in the clean economy, and that helps people save money by saving energy. Climate change is real, and we must face it together. And you can be sure that I will be standing up for this fight at Queen's Park in the days ahead. Thank you, Megawich, merci. I'm happy to answer any
Mike, isn't the horse out of the barn on this already? Because Doug Ford's given notice that he's killing cap and trade, so it's done, right?
So I think he can do it, and I think the new cabinet can do it in a way that's responsible. So if you look at the withdrawal clause in the cap and trade agreement, it says if we give 12 months notice and we do the withdrawal at the end of the compliance period, which the end of the next compliance period is December 31st, 2020, that would significantly reduce the legal risks that Ontario faces right now. I asked the Premier Designate, he campaigned on a platform to save us money. So how is it going to save us money to subject us to what some legal analysis are saying is potentially $2 to $4 billion in cost, plus an additional $100 million in legal costs? So I don't think the people of Ontario voted for us to spend money in that way. So at the very least, let's have a responsible plan to withdraw from cap and trade. And I believe that our alternative, the Green Party's alternative plan, carbon fee and dividend, actually fits well with Mr. Ford's desire to put money in people's pockets because it literally delivers dividend checks to put in people's pockets.
In general, are you stuck? How do you make a difference with the majority PC government? Do you try to, be nice to them and convince them to your side, or do you sort of criticize them by, calling it reckless and comparing things to the gas plant waste? Like, are you stuck between two options here? Be nice or be critical?
Well, I think it's a balance of being of cooperation and confrontation. So my first objective is to be cooperative and look for ways we can work together across party lines, which is why I feel like I've designed my remarks in a way that appeals to the way in which Mr. Ford campaigned, to talk about how we can tackle climate change by creating jobs, by putting money in people's pockets, by helping people lower their energy costs. Those were all things that he campaigned on. And so I think part of being cooperative is looking for ways in which we can work together across party lines. But I also feel like I have an obligation to my constituents, the people who voted for me, to be confrontational where I need to be confrontational. And so for me, it's a matter of balancing cooperation and confrontation.
Mike, Doug Ford has said that he believes climate change is man-made. He's said that several times.
Yes.
And which is why I take note of your line, climate denial, whether explicit or implicit. So could you take me further into your thinking on that? Because I think you're saying that, yeah, he acknowledges that it's real, but implicitly he's doing nothing about it. Is that...
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, my comments did acknowledge the fact that he has said climate change is real and it's being caused by humans. But the point I want to make is that we need actions, not words. And words are meaningless without actions. And so what I'm calling on the new premier, is to actually deliver a plan. It's one thing to say you're opposed to something and to say you're going to essentially kill it. But if you don't have an alternative plan in place, then essentially you're denying action on the biggest crisis we currently face.
There's no evidence that the Tories have any kind of pricing-based carbon policy. Every one of the leadership candidates swore not to impose a carbon tax, to fight a carbon tax federally. Mm-hmm. They think cap and trade is the same thing as a carbon tax. Doug Ford has elided those two. Are you being naive here by hoping against hope? What's going on?
Well, I mean, first of all, there are a number of conservative groups out there who have proposed pollution pricing mechanisms. So I look at Canadians for Clean Prosperity, who is, executive director, is a former policy advisor in Stephen Harper's government. I look at columnists like Glory Goldstein at the Toronto Sun. I look at what's happening in the United States now with former prominent members of George Bush, the first administration, all putting forward carbon pricing mechanisms very similar or explicitly similar in some cases to the carbon fee and dividend program we've put forward. And so I think that's a proposal that actually can fit with conservative ideology. So if the premier designate is serious about tackling climate change and clearly believes that it is caused by humans, then coming up with a pricing mechanism that's market-based and that's supported by conservative, across North America, then why not bring forward an alternative plan to cap and trade that fits with conservative ideology? And I think carbon fee and dividends certainly can and does. And the fact that it puts money in people's pockets through a dividend check, I think would be very appealing to the new premier and the new cabinet.
But none of the people you named, and I know Mark Cameron too, but none of them have a constituency in this provincial party. This Progressive Conservative Party ran hard against the idea of carbon pricing, and they won on it. What's the way forward here?
Well, you know what? First of all, there were a number of candidates who actually became candidates when the previous leader's People's Guarantee was in place, and that plan did have a plan for carbon pricing. So there were a number of candidates who signed on to that initially. Granted, the new leader campaigned on a different platform, but I think I have an obligation to my constituents and to the people of Ontario to try to find ways that we can work with this government to address the climate crisis. And I've put forward an idea that I think is workable, and I'm letting the new premier and the new cabinet know that I'm available to work with them on a plan that I think fits with a number of ideas they put forward in their election campaign.
Yes, will this plan be waiting in the wings? Should we get to the day where Ontario and whatever provinces are with them lose a legal fight to fight the federal government's imposed carbon pricing?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I have to ask, did voters who were looking at ways for the government to save money really want to spend millions of dollars on a legal challenge that most legal scholars have said is a hopeless battle? So one, do we even want to go down that path? And so, one, I'm hoping he changes his mind on that and doesn't spend the money on it, because I think that those dollars could be better spent for other uses, good public services, healthcare, education, etc. If he does decide to go down that path and loses, then we have a plan in place that actually puts money in people's pockets. And I think it would be appealing to any premier to be able to say, I'm the premier that brought you carbon dividend checks. I think that would be appealing to any premier. And then the nice thing about that particular plan is as the price on pollution escalates, the dividend checks actually increase for people. And then ultimately, those dividend checks will hopefully go away because we won't have any more pollution to price anymore. And then, so regardless, I think people are happy. They either get a dividend check to help them through the transition to a low carbon economy. And then at the point where they no longer receive that check, it's because there's no longer revenue being collected because we don't have the pollution. It doesn't exist anymore.
Mike, now that we've got you here and you're an MPP, just to broaden beyond today's thing, people are going to be learning more about the Green Party than just stuff like
Absolutely.
the green stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you going to approach things like healthcare, finances, deficits? Like, a lot of people I don't think know the Green Party's positions or approaches on those kinds of things. So, what can you give us on that?
Sure. Well, I think quickly I'll just say that, we ran on a platform that was about how do we create jobs to put people and planet first. And so as a longtime small business owner, I'm going to be a champion for small businesses in Ontario. As somebody who believes deeply in skating to where the puck is going instead of where it's been, I'm going to fight hard for Ontario to be a global leader in the clean economy. It's a $7 trillion economic opportunity. If Ontario captures even 1% of that, that'll be a larger contributor to our GDP than the auto sector is today. And, I'm fortunate to represent a riding in Guelph that actually is leading in the clean economy and clean innovation, job creation. And I want Guelph to continue to be a leader, and I want Ontario to be a leader, because that's where the jobs and prosperity of today and tomorrow are. I'm a strong supporter in a fiscally responsible approach to investing in good public services. I think we need more money in healthcare, but I think that money needs to be spent in ways that prevent illness instead of just treats illness. Another area I think we can work with the new government is I'm a big supporter of more investments in mental health services. That was an area that the Conservatives promised additional money, not as aggressive as the Green Party would like to see, but ultimately I'd like to see mental health services be a part of OHIP so people can access the services they need when they need it. I'm going to be a big supporter of more funding for education, for social assistance programs, for housing affordability. And of course, we will be raising issues around protecting the places we love in Ontario as well, by protecting our farmland and water.
How do you pay for all that? Like, is there stuff that that the government is doing that you would cut? Like, are there things that
absolutely,
given your fiscal responsibility, should we be getting out of certain things?
Yeah, I think in the recent election campaign, I was the only party leader that actually gave people details on how we could save money and how we could raise additional revenue in ways that didn't impact people with modest to middle incomes. So I think we should just cancel the Liberals' unfair hydro plan. The Financial Accountability Officer says that it is going to cost between $40 and $90 billion over the next 2 decades. We're looking at about $3.5 billion in costs on an annualized basis right now. All to artificially lower electricity prices for a couple of years, then we know they're all going to dramatically go up in 2 years. So why not actually solve the problem by helping people lower their energy bills by saving energy and being more energy efficient? So there's an area we can save money. An area where I think we can raise additional revenues is, why does Ontario give away our natural resources? The fact that our public return on mineral resources is 1.5% Saskatchewan, which is the second largest mining jurisdiction in Canada, their return is 9.4%. So even if we had a public return of 10%, which is in line with Saskatchewan's, that's over $1 billion in additional revenue for people in Ontario. That's our public wealth. I believe it should be used to in a fiscally responsible way, help fund public services without us using debt financing to fund those services. And so I'm happy to work with the new government on ways that we can save money and ways that we can raise additional revenues.
Mike, has there been any further discussion about you and the Liberals sitting together in some kind of arrangement in order that you could all enjoy an official party status?
Well, first of all, I want to be very clear that I have no interest in compromising my independence as a Green MPP. People of Guelph elected me as a Green MPP. And so any suggestion that I know some people floated out there that somehow I would join the Liberals is something that's not in the cards for me. I have been very clear, though, and I think I've been very clear today. I'm happy to work with any party, whether it's the NDP, the Liberals, or the Conservatives on areas of mutual agreement. I mean, I think one of the reasons that so many people in Guelph voted for me is that people are tired of the toxic political culture we currently see in Canada. The notion that I'm always right and you're always wrong, or just the political gamesmanship that takes place here. And I made a commitment to do politics differently and try to change that culture. And so, I've reached out to all three of the other parties with elected members here at Queen's Park to, say, let's sit down and meet and let's figure out areas where we can work together. But I won't do it in a way that compromises my status as a Green MPP.
And to the question, though, you haven't actually had any further formal discussions with the Liberals?
We have not had any formal conversations, no.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Have a great day.